Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel. My name is Colleen Carroll, and I'm a content publishing coordinator at Nexus Marketing and your moderator for today's panel session. Our topic today is effective and efficient tech upgrades for the modern nonprofit. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. But as usual, before I can jump into the questions, I do have a few quick logistics to cover. NXUnite is made in partnership with Nexus Marketing, and the NXUnite mission is to make introductions that lead to lasting relationships and serve as a hub for connection in the mission-driven sector. As you saw in our video on NXUnite, you can find upcoming industry events, suggested influencers to follow, trusted solutions, cause-driven podcasts, and of course, panels with experts such as these lovely folks here with me today. Today's hour-long panel will include time both for questions curated by my team and questions from you all, our fantastic audience. So if you're joining us live, please feel free to submit questions at any time during the panel, either in the questions tab or directly in the chat. But the questions tab is the best place to put them if you want to make sure that they don't get lost. We will then dedicate the second half of this panel session entirely to questions from you all, from our live audience, as well as from registration. If at any point you're having any technical difficulties, please let us know in the chat. My team member Anton is under the username Team NXUnite and will do his best to assist. I did also want to share that this panel session is being recorded. So if you get to the end and you just heard such fantastic insight that you're ready to hear it a second time right away, that's fantastic. It'll automatically be in your email inbox at the end of the session. Give it 5 to 10 minutes and that recording should be there. It will also be accessible on the NXUnite website in the on-demand panel section. So if you have any friends in the industry who you're like, can't believe they missed it, they needed to be there, this panel session was perfect for them, just send them to that same landing page, registration page that you used, and they'll be able to access the recording. Finally, before I introduce today's panelists, I do want to give a big thank you to all for attending the panel, whether you're joining us live, watching the recording kind of tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now. Thank you for taking time out of your day. I get the joy of reading through all the registration, seeing all the different organizations represented. You guys are doing such fantastic work, and yeah, really excited that you are joining us. All right, to begin the introductions, I'd first like to introduce Lori Hochman, Marketing Director at Octria. Lori has a passion for helping groups exceed their fundraising goals. After using Octria for many auction fundraisers, she joined the team to help others boost their auction fundraising for many wonderful causes. Octria has been utilized in over 45,000 event fundraisers, raising over $500 million. So glad you could join us, Lori.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for allowing me to join this group.
Absolutely. Also joining us today is Melissa Smith, Vice President of Marketing and Strategy at DipJar. Melissa is responsible for building the company's public outreach and brand relationships, including overseeing a growing social presence and sales partnership profile. She worked extensively with nonprofit organizations prior to joining the DipJar team. Through her work, Melissa has gained extensive knowledge of the nonprofit sector, the experience that enables her to understand nonprofit organizations and their needs. Glad to have you, Melissa.
Thanks so much for having me. So excited.
Great. Also joining us is Michael Goriaran, President of Arjuna Solutions. Michael is the president of Arjuna Solutions, the leading provider of behavioral economics modeling powered by patented AI services designed to optimize lifetime giving while lowering the cost per dollar raised. Prior to joining Arjuna Solutions, Michael served in key executive roles in the global technology sector for more than 30 years with companies like Microsoft, Xerox, and other early-stage high-growth business ventures. Michael holds an MBA from the J.L. Kellogg Graduate School of Management at Northwestern University and a bachelor's degree in marketing with concentrated studies in economics and Spanish from the University of Rhode Island. He is an avid distance runner, outdoor enthusiast, and active parent of 2 with his wife, Chris. Michael also was the chairman of the board of the Oregon Council for Hispanic Advancement. Glad you could be here, Michael. Oh, you're muted.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending where you are. All right.
Fantastic. And finally, we have Rick Baucom, CEO and founder at Symmetry. Rick describes himself as a disruptioneer working with clients to help them benefit from radical change in business models due to technological innovation. His superpowers lie at the intersection of change management and technology, working with associations and nonprofits to connect their strategies to tangible value for members and staff. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Regis University, specializing in finance, HR, and business administration. He and his wife live in Alexandria, Virginia, and they love to travel and visit with their children and grandchildren. Glad you could be here, Rick.
Hi, happy to be here.
All right, we are going to jump right in and have you start us off with our very first question. Lori, why is it important for nonprofits to continually evaluate their tech stacks and the new technology out there?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question to start this panel off with. If you've been doing the same old and getting the same exact results, then you probably want to take a look and see if you can up your game. That doesn't say that the place that you're in is the best place, but it gives you an opportunity to value what else is around you. Especially when you have new boards, new volunteers, new participants that are helping you. A fresh set of eyes helps make that evaluation easier.
Absolutely. Thanks for starting us off, Lori. I'm going to turn this very same question over to you, Rick. Why is it important for us to continually evaluate our tech stacks and the new technology out there?
Yeah, it is a great question. I think the best answer in my perspective is consumer expectations. We're all interacting with a great set of technologies out there every day. There's a good argument to be made that every company is a technology company, or at least driven, powered by technology. And I think our members and donors and staff their expectations are very high. They expect a consumer grade experience when they're interacting with us. And so it's the best reason I can think of to keep evaluating what's out there as the things evolve.
Absolutely. Melissa, anything you want to add in terms of the importance of reviewing tech stacks?
Yeah, so to echo Lori and Rick at the importance of evaluating it, I think one thing to always keep in mind is your donor. And how can the new technology help you engage better with your donor? As Rick said, we are all consumers of technology. We have it at our fingertips. We are exposed to it at all times. And so you need to make sure that what you're delivering to your donor is engaging. And honestly, technology is the way you're going to do that. So as long as you are staying up to date, your donor is going to notice that and stay engaged with you.
Fantastic. All right, Michael, want to make sure we hear from you on this as well. Anything you want to add in terms of the importance of evaluating tech stacks?
I think the three things that come to mind the most are, first of all, mandatory compliance. Is your tech stack is secure? Is it private? Does it meet the standards in those areas and financial standards for fundraising? So making sure you're really compliant and it's robust in that capability. Second thing, productivity. Are we doing the best we can with the least amount of resources, especially if we're trying to cut costs and operate more efficiently? And last thing, it's innovation. How do we delight? How do we amaze? How do we improve fundraising?
Awesome. We are off to a great start. Melissa, I'm going to have you start us off with our second question. What do you see as the power of new technology for nonprofits in 2023? How can it push nonprofits forward and or make nonprofits more efficient?
I think it's going to make you a lot more effective. So I think nonprofits, at least from my experience, you're always operating with less people than you probably need to get the job done. And I think you need to figure out how to be as effective as possible in the least amount of time. And what we're seeing is technology can help you do that. So there's so much out there to help you. You don't need to try it all and be like, oh my God, I got to go after all these different technologies. Pick one that is going to solve your biggest thorn in your side in terms of effectiveness. If that's fundraising, look at some technologies that are going to help you fundraise. Shameless plug for DipJar here. No offense, everyone. DipJar is great. It is so good for in-person fundraising. Set it up. It's easy to go. But same thing, I'm sure Lori could say for Octare. There's so many things that we can now automate using the technologies that are out there. And at the end of the day, the more time you have to spend with your donors and learning about them and building those relationships, the better your fundraising strategy is going to be.
Definitely. Michael, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. What do you see as kind of the power of technology in 2023?
Well, I think it's the opportunity to see new insights from your donor data. And that's the power of artificial intelligence. It's what humans don't normally have the capability of doing themselves. I could spend an entire hour talking about this, but that's what I find amazing about AI, is getting in to understand what are the new insights, what are the new actions we can take to delight our donors, lower our cost per dollar raised, and improve fundraising. And that's the opportunity set. Great.
Lori, I think you know what question is coming next. What do you see as the power of technology in 2023 and how can we use it?
I think it's good to reevaluate your tech stack. It's also good to reevaluate what you already have in place. Go back to those places and say, hey, what's new for 2023? And I guarantee their development team has been busy fourth quarter and they've been redeveloping and adding new stuff in. So go in your, complete threshold of looking forward for 2023, go look at what you have in place already. And see what's out there. But yeah, I totally agree with you. There is so much new stuff, especially with AI. AI is just exploding right now. And even for the nonprofits, I see a lot of nonprofit AI stuff exploding. But you want to use it in artificial intelligence in an intelligent way also. You want to make sure that it's purposeful and not just, extra.
Definitely. All right, Rick, want to hear from you as well. What do you see as the important thing to kind of take away from 2023 tech?
Lots of things in the tech space to keep an eye on. And AI keeps kind of popping up as a theme because it's the hot topic these days. And I think of artificial intelligence or machines in general helping us do three things. One of those is personalization. How do we keep that personal touch with our members and donors? Artificial intelligence can certainly help us do that. The second thing is in prediction. How do we use the power of the machines to predict behaviors and kind of head those things off? For example, in our world, a lot we talk about churn, specifically membership churn. So how do you predict based on how members engage with you through machine learning models to predict what their behaviors might be and do some interventions? And then the last P, so I think of it in the three Ps. The last is process automation, and that goes to the heart of efficiency and effectiveness. So if you're using robotic process automation or machine learning to do things to make yourself more efficient, make processes flow more easily or in a more automated way, you're kind of hitting all three of those points. So the personalization, prediction, and process are my three Ps for how to use the machines.
Great. Thank you, Rick. For our audience, I want to remind you to please submit questions in the chat, talk, respond, say how it impacts your nonprofit. I also wanted to say that we have some polls that are going live throughout these questions. So if you want to kind of let us know more about your nonprofit, your current experience with your tech, fill out those polls as you see them go live. All right, Michael, I'm going to have you start us off with this next question. For nonprofits that are ready to add to their tech, but don't know where to start or what is most crucial to upgrade, what advice do you have?
I always think it's not about the technology, it's about the business case. So the first and most important thing is, what is the tangible return on investment or internal rate of return that somebody's going to use, the financial impact? The second one is the strategic impact. And those are the two things I always use for budget inclusion, if you will. And then getting some greater cost efficiency. So I would look at those things as priorities.
Great. Lori, when people are looking to upgrade, what advice do you have on how to figure out where to put their energy and attention?
I talk to people that are in your micro industry, in your fundraising network, and see what's working for them. Referrals are a great way to learn from their experiences, what works, what doesn't work. So if you're in the animal services area and humane societies and things like that, talk to those people, because sometimes things tend to be a little nichey for one or the other. If you're in the Rotaries, if you're in the UUs, if you're in the churches, so network within your group and talk to them and make friends with those people. They're your friends, they're not your enemies. You're all in that same industry together, helping that group. So I'm much of a talker, so I love to talk to people around that. I think the reviews, the G2s, Capteras, Trustpilots, things along those lines are a great resource for third-party stuff. We use them all the time. I love when people put reviews up there. You're usually sitting in a 4.8 to a 5-star review, but some people put some amazing recommendations in there and feedback. And if you start reading through those, you're going to get a whole lot of insight that is completely independent.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori. All right, over to you, Rick. What are your thoughts on how to kind of figure out where you need to start when you're looking to upgrade?
Don't start with the technology. I'll echo what Michael said. It's not really about the technology. The first thing we look for when we work with a new client is, can you articulate your strategy as an organization and connect the technology to your strategy? We talk about with them, what's in it for me. It's the simple case of the ROI. What's in it for members? What's in it for donors? What's in it for staff? And if you can articulate that and connect it back to your strategic vision and what you're trying to accomplish as an organization, that's the place to start. And then within that process, we very much stress, gather your data, understand where you are today, because most of us live in a best of breed world in terms of the technology. We've got, donor tech, and we've got member tech, and we've got event tech, and all those things tend to live in different, technology silos. It's just the nature of our business. So make sure you understand what you have today, because oftentimes I get CEOs that come to me and say, for example, in our world, the AMS, right? It's the equivalent of the donor management system, but the association membership management system is not working, right? Why is it not working? Well, it's not working because some system 3 steps away is creating bad data. So it often, the challenges we face are often somewhere else. Make sure you have data about all the applications, how they're performing, how they talk to each other, how they work together, but don't start with the tech.
Rick, that's such a good point, because people ask us all the time when we're on our demos, does it integrate? Does it integrate? Does it integrate? And event fundraising is just one little unit. It's happening for a month or 3 weeks. You do not want it to integrate with all that other stuff, because you do not want that messy, all the little minutia of information pushing out into your CRMs, your management softwares, your things like that. You just want to grab that at the end, who donated and what it is. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's so important to have pristine data so that you can make appropriate expectations, strategy planning, things along those lines.
Yeah, we think of data as fungible. It's your most important asset, right? And you guys in the donor space understand that even more than most of the folks that we deal with in the membership space. But yeah, it's very fungible. Data governance is a huge issue.
Big time.
Absolutely. I think every single panel I'm on, at some point, someone goes, focus on your data, focus on your data. That's the most important thing. Doesn't matter what the topic of the panel is, it will come up. So glad you brought it up, Rick. Thank you. All right, Melissa, any advice for people looking to upgrade their tech stack and figuring out where to start?
Yeah, so my thing is very in line with what Rick was saying. Start with your strategic plan. So get with your board, your team, your development team, and figure out what the strategic plan looks like for the upcoming year, and then like the next 2 to 3 years too. And what are your goals? Like, what do you want to focus on in the next 6-12 months? And how can you better achieve that? So if you're looking at something like in your strategic plan, like you are really hoping to grow your event fundraising. So go ahead and look at some technologies that are going to help you do that more effectively. Because honestly, as we've all said, there are so many technologies out there. There's probably some tech for every piece that you need to get done in your nonprofit. And so instead of just like bringing them all to your organization and like not being able to dedicate time to it, pick one that is going to be the most impactful to your plan and have the most profound effect that you can then say, okay, I feel good about this. This was a great choice. Now what's the next step that we look at? Maybe it's something to help with donor engagement. Maybe it's something to learn more about your donors in AI, things of that sort. And so just making sure that it always aligns with that strategic plan. I know there's a lot of stuff that's out there that's shiny and you just want to be like, oh, that's cool, I want to try that. Is it actually going to do something that is going to help your organization is another story. And does it fit with something that you can actually effectively implement? Because that's the other thing I think a lot of nonprofits don't think about is what does that implementation process look like for new technology? How easy is it? If you're going to switch your CRM or you've never had your CRM, like I hope you plan to dedicate like 2 months to that. Because as we all said, data is king in the nonprofit space with your donors. So just knowing what you need to dedicate to each new technology will also help you say, this is my top one choice that I want to get started first. And then you can kind of work your way down from there with the capabilities that your team has.
Fantastic. I'm going to go a little bit kind of further down the line. So someone's chosen their technology, they've started a new kind of thing, they've added it to their tech stack. How can they evaluate how effective it is, kind of reviewing it and seeing that it was a good choice? Rick, can I have you start us off with this?
Sure. Make sure you start understanding what the results you want. So OKRs, or the key results that you're looking for. Again, connecting that back to your organizational mission and strategy, and take small bits. I come from a world that we used to do technology projects over a period of 5 years. Now you get 5 days or 5 months, right? 5 weeks to accomplish a technology project. So I very much believe in taking small bits of the technology, doing minimum viable products or minimum viable projects to make sure that the technology is doing what you want it to do. And if it doesn't, you have a much greater ability to pivot and change the way you're approaching that, because there's a technology for everything out there. You can, if this piece of technology doesn't work, go find another one that does. So I think that's just set your expectations up front. Make sure that you structure the effort to implement a new technology in very small bits so that you're understanding how you're doing all along the way. We love to do sprints, right? So 2 weeks or 4 weeks in a sprint. Did we meet the objective? No, let's pivot and change the way we're going about this. So make sure that you set those key results and objectives up front.
Fantastic. Melissa, bringing this question over to you. Any advice for nonprofits looking to figure out how to evaluate new technology after they've implemented it?
Setting goals. So like Rick was saying, like understanding what your expectation to get out of this technology is. The nice thing with so many of these tech products out there is you can see real-time data coming back from it. So fortunately, most of the technology you're going to look at, you're going to be able to understand quickly, like, okay, was this platform working? Like, did it work? I also wouldn't be afraid to say, no, this technology did not work for me. Like, there's so much out there that maybe you went and used an event ticketing website and you're like, you know what, these parts were fine. And we saw good things from our donors. We heard some good things, ease of use and things like that. But we didn't capture as many checkout donations as we expected. And why didn't you? So taking a look at that, you can then just kind of consistently reevaluate. And I know that sounds like a lot of work, that every piece of technology you're adding that you have to constantly reevaluate, but it's true. I mean, it's just like your development director reevaluating, how am I building relationships with donors? It's the same thing for tech. So just kind of constantly, keeping an eye on how it's performing will serve you in the long run, instead of just implementing and kind of turning your eye and saying, all right, that's already done, moving on to the next project. Stay with it, dedicate, maybe have a point person on your team to just oversee the project for the next 6 months of having the new tech, just making sure they're checked in with it. Hearing back from volunteers, donors, staff members, what are your thoughts? Things like that, you'll get that feedback pretty quickly.
Fantastic. All right, Lori, over to you. Any advice for people trying to figure out how to evaluate new tech?
So, technology that you're using for events, like I said, it's for a specific time frame. So it's a little different than using something long-term, year-round kind of thing. So for that sort of situation, I would say first, don't panic. A lot of people will put it up, they'll start running something and they're like, oh my God, there's no traction. And they freak out. Don't freak out. Relax. Let it settle in. Figure it out, talk to your team, especially for auctions. There's a flurry of activity in the beginning and then it plateaus off. I call it my upside down bell curve. And then there's a flurry of activity at the end. So make sure you have a really nice length of time and a really good data set before you start to panic. And then take a look at what you've got and then move forward from there. So I think, I'm framing it up in a sort of longitudinal area rather than, specifics. And I know, you want to hit your goals, but give it some time and work with it. And then you can go back, and a lot of times these softwares are very deep and you may not have used the entire platform in its capacity. So you may not need to trash something, or you may need to just, add on some extra layers or continue to learn a little more about it. Maybe you don't have the right people in place that are running it. Maybe there's other skills within your group where some other people can participate. So, may need to widen the net within your organization. There's a lot of different ways you can go with that.
Fantastic. All right, Michael, you know the drill. Anything you want to add in terms of advice for evaluating?
I would say lesson most important, best practice, you never cut any new technology into production without going through a pilot first. So it's you don't want to go on a suicide mission by saying, let me just roll this out, And so I would strongly encourage folks to have a pilot. The pilot should be structured, right? You want to make sure that in the case of looking at other business case studies from clients that used it before, what are your key performance indicators, the things that would show you that you're heading in the right direction, and are you achieving the outcomes? And then keep the pilot to a smaller percent of the population, maybe a quarter of the population or 10% of the population, so you can see its impact. And then, as several of the panelists have echoed, refine it, train more people, get more adoption, then roll it out into production.
Michael, that's such a good point, because so many of the platforms out there will say, oh yeah, we'll do a demo with you, and they'll let you touch it while you're on the computer with them, and they'll give you like 48 hours to evaluate it. How am I going to evaluate something in 48 hours and make a gigantic decision? No, you want to make sure that you're working with a partner that is willing to show you their platform. What are they hiding that they can only give it to you for 48 hours? What are you going to go recode something and be up against them and create it? No. So you want to make sure that you're with somebody that you can really test it out and run it through some rigors and really, taste it, churn it, things like that.
And I would add maybe one more small point is ease of use. And ease of use comes from people being able to use it, but also ease of use that it doesn't disrupt your operations. Yeah. So it can be a beautiful piece of technology, but if it gives you all kinds of operational headaches and people don't like using it, it's not usually in the business case, but I usually find that ends up being the showstopper, because people are like, it's just too hard. They say the euphemism, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, right? And you don't want something to an operational nightmare.
The thing that occurs to me is that you should be constantly reevaluating the performance of your technology. Whatever's new today will be old next week. The adoption curve is we talk about the shark fin of adoption. It used to be a bell curve. The early adopters did their thing and everybody else lagged behind to see how they did. That curve now looks like a very sharp increase and decrease. And we talk a lot about technical debt. Southwest Airlines experience during the holidays is a great example of why you should constantly be looking at where you stand, because what you're using today may stand up well under today's circumstances. But as Southwest found out, if you have an unexpected event, you can find out that technical debt catches up with you over a very short period of time. So we talk a lot about technical debt, reevaluate where you are, make sure that what you chose 5 months or 5 years ago is standing up to today's requirements, because we have lots of folks come to us and say, we'd love to do this business model or that business model, and the technology's in the way. That's technical debt.
Definitely. All right. I have one final question from my team that I'm going to give to our panelists. So I'm going to encourage our audience to keep submitting those questions. I've been seeing them coming in, and I'm going to try to get to as many of them as possible. So if you want to get a question answered, start submitting it. Now is the great time to do so. All right. But before I do that, I am going to sneak my final question in. And Lori, I'm going to have you start us off. Do you have any advice for nonprofit professionals who are ready to make upgrades but are struggling to get the board on board and to agree to such a change?
Ooh, that's a good question. I let them touch it, let them feel it, let them see it, let them interact with it. They don't necessarily need to be the one inputting the data, but show them what is actually happening. Don't just tell them, show them.
Great advice. Michael, anything you want to add in terms of getting board members on board?
So as a board member, I can tell you, don't get wrapped around the axle on your mission. Talk about the impact of the technology. So what strategic impact, what financial impact are you going to make? So the case is very clear to the board, and you're in a situation where you own it. Don't abdicate to your marketing agency. Well, they told me or someone else is going to do this. That's not a good business case. Own it, know what it does, and express the business impact that you're going to see on retaining donors, improving giving, lowering operating costs.
Fantastic. All right, over to you, Rick. Any advice for getting team members on board with new technology?
Yeah, boards are necessarily data driven, so make sure you give them data around I'll go back to with them, what's in it for me, right? So you make your case based on what's in it for your donors, for your members, for your staff members, in very tangible, data driven kinds of ways, because boards are making the decision based on the best data. And hope is not a strategy, right? You can't just say, we hope that this will increase our donations, or we hope that this will increase our engagement. You need to be able to demonstrate that with data.
Right. And tying that into what's in it for them is also the hours that their team is going to dedicate, whether it's going to reduce their workload or increase their workload, or how much faster they're going to be able to pivot and turn on a dime and make changes or interact, with their donors and make an impact.
Definitely. All right, Melissa, anything you want to add in terms of advice for getting the board involved?
Yeah, so in an effort to not repeat the very good tips that everyone else gave on data-driven ideas, I think one thing that might be a little bit different is to ask that technology platform to give you some case studies and some proof points from other organizations. So it is totally acceptable if somebody is pitching you on why they should use your platform. You should go back and say, okay, but can you show me other organizations similar to me that this has worked for? Because then once you get those, you can take that to your board and be like, look, I'm not just saying this because I heard a great sales pitch and I like this technology. You can say, look at all these other organizations that also use this technology and look at the success that they've had. I know that's a big thing when we're talking to new leads, even for DipJar. They're like, okay, but do you have this type of organization? And can you tell me how they use it and all these things? And it's true that we need to be all knowing about our own platforms. And we have that information. Absolutely. I can tell you X, Y, and Z, these types of organizations, these are the best practices for them. So feel free to ask that person from that technology company, you tell me why this is going to work for me. And then take that to your board and say, look, I like it. I've approved this. And look at all these other places that also use this and have seen good success from it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Melissa. All right, we're officially shifting over to questions from the audience. We've had some great ones come in. Again, going to encourage people to keep submitting them so we can get to as many as possible. First one is for Michael. How would you suggest doing a rollout to a small percent when you are a smaller fundraising org?
So as long as the rollout is statistically accurate, you're fine. So even if you're smaller, you can do something that is statistically accurate. You don't want to roll something out to your population that gives you an invalid read, in the sense that you don't have a certain number. We usually look to about 250 participants in a control and treatment each to be able to give a statistically valid measurement. If you're larger, you can do that across donor segments, maybe 10 donor segments. If you're smaller, you'd want to have an N, if you will, that just is relevant statistically.
Fantastic. All right, just so we can get to as many as possible, I'm not going to have every panelist answer every question, but does anyone have anything to add before I move to the next one? All right. In that case, Rick, I'll have you start us off with this next one. A question came in asking, half of our membership is over age 65. Any thoughts on how to use technology to reach these folks?
Yeah, I have an opinion about that, which may not necessarily be popular. I think we overplay the demographic. I've got an 85-year-old mother-in-law who is probably as proficient with her iPad. I think you have to meet them where they are. So all of us have different tech specialties. Even in our own organization, we have people that want to use the Mac platform, and others of us want to use the Windows platform. And that's true no matter what your demographic is. So I think I think we overplay the over 65, so they're not necessarily tech savvy, because I think they are. I don't know how you survive today without being a little tech savvy.
Exactly.
But I think it's my advice would be meet them where they are. If I think a lot of the over 65 population is very iPad, iPhone, smartphone centric. So meet them there.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Lori, anything you want to add in terms of kind of reaching and connecting with the older generations with technology?
I absolutely concur with Rick's comments. So many groups will be so anxious. Oh my gosh, we can't do mobile bidding at an event. People don't know how to do it. They're too old. They're too this. You know what? They're pretty smart. They come up, they figure out how to scan a code, and then they land exactly where they need to be. And then, at least for us, for Octree, we do have some kiosk modes where you can have some people floating around. And then that gives you an opportunity to interact with your audience. Instead of everybody looking at a phone, now you're chatting with them, and you're, learning their story, why they're there, why they're supporting, and it just expands your conversation so that you can know your audience even better. So, if they are having a struggle, meet them where they are, teach them. Maybe they do want to learn. It gives you an opportunity to talk to those people. Hey, how can we help you? What can we do differently? And you can tell I'm a people person. I just talk to them, learn, find out, how can you help? Maybe you need to do a information session for those people, just a private one, or, how thrilled would they be if, you did something special just for those that, are struggling, and then they're not feeling the pressure of the rest of the audience and those young kids running around all fast. Just find a way to be nice to them, help them out.
Fantastic advice. Thank you, Lori. All right. Anyone have anything to add to this question? All right. Melissa, I'm going to have you start us off with our next one. Do you have any recommendations for keeping up to date on the best practices and tools and tricks in the tech space? I think this question implies that things are always changing and moving, and it can be hard to figure out what is happening and what a nonprofit should be doing.
Yeah, there are. There's so much going on at all times, and you guys are so busy doing other things, focusing on fundraising and things of that sort. My recommendation, what I used to do when I worked in the nonprofit, is I found like 2 thought leadership blogs or like websites that I subscribe to newsletters. And one, Nonprofit Tech for Good, is a great platform. I think everyone here too, probably you could subscribe to like newsletters for Octria, for all of the companies that we work for. And yes, you're going to get information about our business, of course, but you can also kind of see just like what's out there. But that's what I would do. I would head to some blogs, simply Google nonprofit technology, find some websites that are talking about nonprofit technology, and just hit subscribe to that newsletter. That's the best way, because then you don't have to go searching for it. It's just going to get delivered to your inbox. Run it quickly, read it however often it comes through, and that way you can just kind of stay on top of it.
Absolutely. I love the newsletters that come into my inbox, and some days I read them all in depth, some days I skim them, but it gives me an idea of what is actually happening.
Exactly.
Awesome. Michael, any other advice for kind of keeping on top of it all?
I agree wholeheartedly with Melissa. I read a ton. I'm a voracious reader, and I think it's important to have a variety of things at your fingertips. I tend not to read in the nonprofit industry. So I'll do my normal scans of the stuff that everybody reads, but then I'm usually spending the majority of my time reading about technology. I follow Forrester or Gartner, the industry analysts that are talking about where technology is going. I find it super fascinating. I mean, in my career at Microsoft, we saw all kinds of innovations that I want to see what I can do about bringing into nonprofit. So I have a very wide appetite for that. Webinars are super efficient as well. I don't have the time to travel on a plane. I don't want to make the environmental impact of traveling on a plane. So boom, I'm the king of webinars, right? And then usually they're on demand instead of participating, because who's got the time, right? So thanks.
Awesome. Anything anyone wants to add?
Don't forget podcasts. There's a lot of great ones out there.
Absolutely. And if you have something to share, Rick, I'd love to know what those are, because I'm always looking for the latest and greatest, so maybe you can put it in the chat. Thanks.
Definitely. I love podcasts and audiobooks because I can do something else while I'm doing it, like drive. It's always great. I can take in content without having to stop everything. Awesome. Rick, I'm going to turn this next question to you. We had a question come in that I think was based on a conversation, like a topic you were already discussing. Do you have any suggestions for 2 platforms that don't seem to integrate together, but do need to talk to each other for different divisions, i.e. fundraising and finance type of thing?
Yeah, this is probably the biggest technology change in recent years. We used to have to glue together all of these systems by writing code that was specific to those systems to make them talk to each other. There's a lot of great integration platforms out there. Microsoft builds them, Amazon builds them. It does take some configuration and expertise to make them work. and it's kind of a little bit of inside baseball about APIs and those kinds of things. But it's worth the investment to learn about those and get your tech team to figure out how to make that work for you, because the biggest technical debt that we deal with as a consulting organization is where somebody wrote, a specific interface between ABC system and XYZ system, and something changes, right? And then you have to go redo all of that. Or the vendor on ABC system upgrades, and now all of that stuff is broken. These integration platforms that are gaining lots of momentum out there, and there's some names: MuleSoft, Tibco, Amazon has them, Microsoft with the Azure API infrastructure. Those are all systems that people should be exploring to make things work and talk together more efficiently. And they're far more resilient. Once you master that, they're a lot more resilient than the old, that we think of them as spaghetti, right? All the systems talking to each other on various connections. So if you put an integration platform in place, it can really go a long way to solve that problem.
And if I could just build on Rick's comments, I agree with him completely. But the thing I would say is leave it to the person providing the service. Like, it's one of those things where I've heard Lori mention a couple of times about the isolation of certain systems, where you're using it for a particular purpose. Then why integrate it? Why not let the service provider do that for you? And then it's up to them to make it work, and you hold them accountable for the performance, and don't worry about the payment of making someone integrated into your system like a permanent party or architecture. You may want to bolt it on when you need it and replace it with somebody else that's better in the future.
Definitely.
Yeah, and that's certainly true in like event management. Those things tend to be happening in cycles, and those longer duration things like CRMs and data warehouses and learning management systems, all of those things are where you have to put more permanent solutions in place. But they change too, right? The average life cycle of an application nowadays is 5 years or less. So
awesome. Lori, I'm going to have you start us off with this next question. How do we keep a personal touch, that connection that is so vital to humans, while also taking advantage of technology?
Video and audio and social media. I mean, I can't talk about it enough. I mean, if you're putting something out there, just text based on social media, and you're not connecting a video or a photo with that, you're losing an opportunity. It takes up a whole lot more real estate on the social media thread. Usually with a video, those algorithms will push it higher up there. When you're live, it's at the top of a reel or at the top of the platform. So using those services and maximizing them is important. That's for social media. Then there's a whole other conversation about segmenting emails and making sure that you're sending the right message to the right people at the right time. And then if you're talking about reaching people and pulling on their heartstrings, then you want to make sure that you have testimonials and videos at the moment where they're donating, whether it's on your event website, utilizing an event website that has the ability to include those stories in there. Your donation requests, make sure every single one of them has a story. I mean, I could go on for days on this topic, but constantly tying it back to how are those dollars going to help your constituents, your people that you're supporting, your city, your people, sheltering, feeding, healing, all that good stuff, all the adverbs.
Fantastic. Melissa, anything you would add in terms of like keeping a personal touch when we have technology?
Personalization. So I think we as a society are not, I think we still view relationship building. It can be via text, email, social media, any of those platforms. I know it seems impersonal, but I think we all use it so much and we rely on it that it's just become how you can connect with other people. But I think what's super important is personalizing it. So this goes to data again, getting first names of people. I mean, honestly, simply just personalizing an email that says, "Hey, Melissa," it just to the donor, it makes them feel like, okay, my name, like this is directed at me. This is not just a mass email. And then also you could go further than that, like develop different donor audiences. And so like Lori was saying, like social media is great, but know that that's going to reach a very specific segment of your donor audience. It's not going to reach everyone, and that's fine. Not all of your communications need to hit everything. And that's where these technology programs can come in to help you. So like social media, you can use like Asana or some platforms that help you schedule out your social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and you can change the messaging a little bit because you know the demographics for each of those a little bit different. Then you can use an email management software that design different emails. You can look at open rates and who's opening this and how can I better make this personalized for that type of donor. Things like that. Just constantly be thinking like, how can I make this more personal for the donor? Telling stories, pictures, things of that sort. Don't think just because you're using technology makes it impersonal. I don't think that's true anymore.
100%, Melissa.
So can I build on top of that point for a sec? Just to complement what Melissa was saying, it's all about audience of one marketing, right? There's no such concept anymore of a demographic. I think Rick was saying the same thing earlier. Was don't stereotype them, meet them where they are, let them self-select. We are in the business of personalization. We wholeheartedly believe this, but I feel like it's we give the correct ask amount, and there's a certain level of subtle communication when the ask amount is correct for you at that moment in time, and it's not a static amount all the time. And whether or not you receive a mailing, what the cadence is, things like that become personalized in the relationship engagement. And then also whether or not you're in a situation where you can convey things about the structure of their gift and what it was used for and how it could be changed to provide a broader impact. And now you're down at this audience of one marketing. It's as if I phoned you up to be able to have the conversation. If your marketing looks like that, it's much more powerful than dear resident or dear Colleen, right? So.
Absolutely. All right. Anyone have any final things to add?
No, just echoing all of that. Personalization, prediction, process. That's my 3 Ps. And personalization is something that we all expect now as a consumer. So we should be doing it as organizations.
I love all your acronyms, Rick. Do you have them posted all over your office? We're going to need a 360 of your view.
Awesome. Well, unbelievably, we are getting to the very end of our session. So I'm going to do one final question so we hear from everyone one last time. The hour always flies by. Let's see. Michael, I'm going to have you start us off with this question. Today, we dedicated this hour to discussing tech upgrades and effective and efficient ways to do it. But what other topics related to nonprofits do you hope nonprofit professionals will be thinking about and considering in the next few months?
So it is mandatory for any nonprofit leader at any level, in any capacity, to understand technology. So I would love people to learn more about, in the case of us, about artificial intelligence. What does it do? How does it work? Not so that you're a technologist like Rick. Obviously we're not looking at getting the expert of depth that he brings to the equation, but having people have enough depth where they know then what's capable and how to apply it so that they really become stewards of their good fortune.
Definitely. All right, over to you, Rick. Any topics or conversations we need to be thinking about in the next few months?
I think it intersects with technology, and that's change leadership and culture of innovation. There's an old saying, Peter Drucker said, strategy, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So, you can have the best technical strategies, best technical or technology systems. And if you've got a resistant culture or a dysfunctional culture or a we've always done it this way culture, you've got to change those things. So change leadership, culture of innovation. How do we set ourselves up for success within the organization and set the culture?
Definitely. All right, over to you, Melissa. Any topics or conversations?
I think it's kind of similar to what everyone's been saying. I just think staying active in the conversation and staying nimble. I think it's hard when you have this culture, nonprofits, very often we've always done it this way. Totally get it. It's easy to kind of do things you've always done. But if you're looking to gain something new, your old practices aren't going to be it. So just be willing to try something that's a little bit different. Don't be afraid if it doesn't work out as you hope. That's okay. There's other things out there. But I think that is just ever important for nonprofits to keep in mind.
Absolutely. All right, Lori, you know the drill. Any topics or conversations?
I'm going to ride the coattails of everybody here, and especially Melissa, where you're talking about being nimble and being open-minded. A lot of times we do webinars at Auctrion, very auction-centric, and event-centric. But having something like these Nexus topic conversations are a great way to sample so many people and so many topics and so many things. So I love that you guys bring this to us. I don't think I would have ever been on a conversation panelist with these lovely people, maybe one or two, but only accidentally, but purposeful, and having this conversation and being able to share our audiences with each other. And these topics and these conversations are phenomenal. So I'm gonna point the arrow back at you, Colleen. Thank you for these, because I think this gives people an opportunity to talk about new things and hear what other people are saying, even seeing what the other questions are being asked. So keep subscribing to these. I think they're great.
Thank you so much, Lori. That is so very kind. I mean, I feel that on a personal level, I get to learn so much from so many experts from being on these panel sessions. So thank you. All right, with that, we have reached the end of our panel. I want to give a big thank you to our panelists for sharing your insights today. I know if we were in an in-person setting, there would be a round of applause. So just know that I'm sending that to you emotionally through our virtual space. I also want to give a big thank you to everyone who attended, whether you attended live or you are watching the recording. I know you have a busy life, busy schedule. You guys are doing fantastic work. So thanks for taking time out of your day. I do hope you will join us for future sessions. We have a ton of panels planned for the next few months. So keep your eye out on the NXUnite website, the NXUnite LinkedIn page. You can even find me on LinkedIn, and I'll make sure you're up to date on everything that is happening. We have panels on endowment best practices. That's actually one later today. Board engagement strategy, kind of everything from donors, from engaging them to retaining them, and all that good stuff. So there's so much out there, and I hope it will be helpful and beneficial to you. I will make a quick suggestion that if you are going to join us for future NXUnite panels, I highly suggest making a free NXUnite account. This way you get to start earning what's called cause coins when you attend sessions and participate. And when you amass enough of those, you can use them from some discounts on industry software and some free consultations with some of our friends in the industry. So if you're going to be spending time with us anyway, you might as well be getting that extra benefit. We just dropped in the chat all of our panelists' LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with them after, find their LinkedIn there. But otherwise, that is it for me. Again, a big thank you to our panelists, and I hope everyone has a nice rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.